Please welcome our host for this evening's program, The Hill and News Nation's Senior Vice President of Editorial Content, Bill Sammon.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Please. Appreciate everybody coming out in this lovely weather tonight to help us celebrate our newest lawmakers, the freshly minted members of the 119th Congress of these United States of America. Let's give it up for the newest lawmakers. We're also going to have some more veteran lawmakers, and I'm hoping that they are going to provide some advice to their incoming colleagues, which means it could get quite interesting pretty quickly. I want to just briefly introduce myself. I am Bill Sammon. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Editorial Content for The Hill and News Nation. As you probably already know, The Hill is the leading political and policy website in America. You probably don't know that it is turning 30. So The Hill is experiencing a birthday. And one of the birthday presents I thought we'd give it tonight is a bit of an assist from its sister company, News Nation. And so we're going to have News Nation help with the questioning tonight during tonight's panel discussion. So that should be exciting. I just want us all to take a moment and reflect on the fact that the lawmakers in this very room, in a matter of weeks, are going to be grappling with some of the most difficult, some of the most pressing, some of the most consequential issues of our day, whether it's the economy, whether it's immigration, whether it's any number of foreign policy flashpoints all over the place, and some of which seem to be growing increasingly complicated with every passing news cycle. These are the kinds of issues that these men and women are going to be tackling on our behalf in a very short period of time, and particularly in the first crucial 100 days of the new president's second term. That's an unusual phrase, a new president's second term. I think only once before in our history has that been a phrase that even made sense, but here we are. I do want to just say that the big question tonight, probably on everybody's mind, is what does 2025 look like legislatively? Obviously we just had the election. Obviously the Republicans happened to win the White House and also both chambers of Congress, but by very narrow margins. So you have to ask yourself, will we actually have some bipartisanship? Will we have some cooperation in order to get some kind of meaningful legislation passed? We're going to get into that tonight. We're going to talk about some of the possible pieces of legislation that could be passed and what's really not possible to be passed with these kinds of narrow margins. So it should be a very lively, a very insightful, and dare I say, a very bipartisan conversation. Who would have thought that we'd be talking about a bipartisan conversation in 2024? Leave it to The Hill and News Nation to put together a bipartisan conversation. So before we dig into that, I want to briefly thank our sponsors tonight, Samsung, the American Petroleum Institute, Amazon, and Connect. We really appreciate their support. We wouldn't be able to do this event without them. I want to briefly lay out what we're going to be doing. We're going to have some opening remarks, then we're going to have the aforementioned panel discussion, and then we will be able to get into full holiday festive mode, party mode. So we've got a lot to look forward to. I do, at this point, without further ado, want to bring up Kevin O'Hanlon, who is the Senior Director of Government Relations for Samsung Electronics America. Kevin's going to make have a few words to say. So take it away, Kevin. And again, thank you all so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening. Welcome to Samsung. My name is Kevin O'Hanlon, Senior Director of Government Relations for Samsung Electronics America. I have the great pleasure of welcoming you to our DC office this evening. Samsung, obviously well known as a South Korean company, but we are very proud to have been an American company now for over 40 years. Just in the last 4 years, Samsung has announced almost $50 billion of investment in U.S. manufacturing, from semiconductors in Texas. We manufacture washing machines in South Carolina, and now our most recent investment, EV batteries in Indiana. And all of this is thanks to our partnership with members of Congress through legislation such as the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So we look forward to working with the incoming class of members of Congress. We've had a great relationship over the last 40 years here in the United States, and we're looking forward to the next 40 years and beyond. So to all of you, thank you for joining us this evening. I know nobody wants to hear me talk, so I'm going to pass it back and let the program proceed, but thank you for coming this evening. We're very pleased to host you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin and Samsung, and to our other sponsors, Amazon, API, and Connect. Please welcome now to the stage, Michael Schnell, the Hill's congressional reporter, and Kelly Meyer, Washington correspondent for News Nation. They are joined by Congressman Kevin Hern, a Republican from Oklahoma and chair of the House Republican Policy Committee, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, a Democrat from Massachusetts, Representative-elect Nick Begich, a Republican from Alaska, and Representative-elect Lateefah Simon, a Democrat from California.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And to our panelists, thank you so much. The newbies, welcome to Washington. Veterans, thanks for helping me get situated. To start off, first question, I want to ask our new members who are here to just give us something that they're excited about, hopeful about coming to Washington, perhaps maybe a little apprehensive about coming to Washington. And for the vets, your best piece of advice you have for these incoming members. Mr. Hern, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think everybody comes here with this notion you're going to change America when you get here the first day, but I would encourage you to listen a lot and to make a lot of friends. You'll be surprised, and all of you in this room would be surprised how many friends you have across the aisle. No offense to the press, or maybe offense to the press, is that they make it sound like everybody hates everyone, and that is not the case. In fact, you know, I've got friends like, you know, people you may be heard of before, like AOC and others, and I'm one of the most conservative members in Congress. So you can be friends. You can agree to disagree. I think that's important. We all represent the folks that put us in Congress, and I think it's important to note that. And then we work and find ways to work together. When you're in the minority, it is terrible in the House, and so try to find ways to help people and find people that work with you. And the first person that did this was Brad Schneider from Illinois. He came to me on Ways and Means and worked with me on a tax bill when I was in the minority. I'm returning the favor today with Jimmy Panetta and others, so it's great work.
Congressman Auchincloss.
Do I have a favor coming up? Two pieces of advice. One, inside the chamber, make it a point to sit down one-on-one with as many members as possible during our long vote series, and we'll have a lot of them, and ask them, why'd you run for Congress? And then listen. And you'll learn a lot about people that way, and you kind of learn what makes members tick, and that becomes useful as you're thinking about legislation and as you're building relationships. And then I'd say even more importantly, maintain feedback loops with reality. One of the biggest sins that politicians commit is we isolate ourselves from feedback, particularly negative feedback, because most rooms that we walk into in Washington, candidly, the people who are there are being paid to listen to us talk, either staff or lobbyists or other members, reporters. And if you are surrounded by people who are paid to listen to you talk, you can start to think that you got something useful to say. And having tight feedback loops with reality, friends, voters, local and state officials being like, nah, you're full of it on this one, is really, really valuable, and more so the more senior you get.
Congressman-elect Begich.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was elected to change America, but I recognize there's a process. And, you know, I'm here to learn about that process, but also to represent the people of Alaska. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it was the Alaskan people that sent me here to D.C. to tell their story. And I believe that Alaska has a compelling story. It needs to be part of our national conversation. So many of the challenges that we are facing as a nation deal with energy security, mineral security, the need to restore domestic manufacturing and supply chain strength to America, and Alaska is a part of that. And so I'm looking forward to advancing that conversation and also being part of the national solutions to things like soaring inflation. And, you know, where there are opportunities for us to work together across the aisle, we're going to take those opportunities because that's the right thing to do. I mean, at the end of the day, even in the red districts, there's Democrats there too. And we need to make sure that we're representing the needs of the American people, making sure that we're solving the challenges today and for those challenges that we're going to be encountering for those generations yet to come. There's going to be a lot of challenging decisions, hard conversations in this Congress, but I'm looking forward to diving into those with everybody.
And Congresswoman-elect Simon.
Well, we're going to work together and a lot. We're already almost besties. You know, the 119th class is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. We have been spending time with one another, I mean, a lot of time for the last 3 weeks. And Mr. Jeffrey said it the best. When you hang out with someone's little baby, when you sit next to their partner, when you share a meal, you should be able to see each other as human. I gotta say, the tribal nature, and I'm someone who's worked in prisons and jails and on the streets of Oakland for much of my adult life, the tribal nature of our democracy has to shift. We are all looking for the adults in the room. So if you ask me what I'm most excited about, I'm actually so excited with all of my heart to be able to work with you day in and day out. You don't get anything done by just working with supposedly your friends. If you're in a cubicle of 99 people and you're only talking to 4, what gets done? With that kind of lexicon, you know what happens? The children of Republicans and Democrats who are addicted to methamphetamine don't get treatment. What happens is young black women, like my daughter and some of the folks from the 119th, they know right now, the new members, she's giving birth now. Like now. At Georgetown.
Congratulations.
I say that to say, I was like, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. I promise.
Thanks for being here.
But, and I'll end here. If we believe in the sanctity of family, then we will be able to have hard but beautiful and hopefully faith-filled conversations of what we want those families to experience, how they experience healthcare and not just a college education, but the care economy, how those nurses need to be compensated and educated and held and loved. There are, in fact, I believe, cross-faith, cross-Democrats, cross the Republican aisle, there are things that we know that we can move in this space. I still feel that way. The thinly veiled democracy is still ours. It's still ours collectively. So I think the test of who we can be in times where there's very little that certain few agree with, we have to make sure the majority of us who actually know and understand what we all deserve, that's the plate that we must eat from.
That's what I love about conversations like this one, and when we talk with you guys on the Hill or elsewhere, and you get to know that you all really do talk to each other across the aisle, you do get along. But I know you're talking about that focus that you want to bring as you come in. How do you keep that vision going as things do get tough, as conversations do get heated, as you do disagree? I know we talk a lot about on News Nation and the Hill about getting away from this divisiveness. A lot of Americans and voters I've talked to on the campaign trail want to get away from this. They want to see you all work together. So how do you hold to this promise and this outlook that you're talking to us now?
Friends, how do you do it?
Yeah, you want to ask me?
Yeah, sure.
You know, I think you do surround yourself. Again, I'm wrapping up Lorna as the chair of the largest caucus in Congress, the Republican Study Committee, 180 Republicans. And we're not political at all. It's all about policy, which is, I spent 35 years in business before coming to Congress 6 years ago, never ran for any office before, really didn't like politics at all. And I spent 35 years of that as a McDonald's franchisee, 24 restaurants, starting from assistant manager, working my way through for 10 years. And I can tell you, I never asked a customer if they were Democrat or Republican if they cared about politics. They all wanted one thing. They wanted to be served. They wanted value. And I look at that. When I ran for office, I ran in a very contested primary, open seat. And I looked at it the same way. You know, when you're elected by Democrat or Republican, once you're elected, you represent the entire district. And I think that's why I still win by 25, 30% each race. I think it's important. I think that's why I have friends on both sides of the aisle. While I have conservative principles, I still respect the people that I run against and don't speak evil of them in the press. I will say one last thing. I do think that one of the biggest problems we have in politics today, and I just did an editorial board, and they didn't endorse me, but that's okay. But I did say to them, because they asked me, said, you know, you're from the era of Reagan, and you don't support the 80-20 rule, or if the bill is 80% good, you don't support it a lot of times. I said, most people would on both sides if you guys reported on those successes of getting an 80% bill. But you don't on either side. Either side, you report on the 20% because that's very polarizing, and that's a way to draw attention to people. And I think we have a lot of work to do in America about what matters to America. And people are really worn out on political bitterness, and they really want to find people who care about America. And, we're seeing a testament. This happens every 6 to 10 years where one party has all three parts of the government, because I think the confluence of that aggravation comes to bear. And you see this, and you get a chance to, set that idea in motion. And 2 years later, you usually screw it up. So we have an opportunity here as Republicans, but it's so narrow, as you alluded to, that this is not going to be some super red narrative. It's going to be a very bipartisan approach as we go forward.
Anybody else want to take that one, or you want to?
Well, I'll tell you, Congressman Don Young, who many of you knew or knew of, was the longest-serving Republican in U.S. history, and he was our congressman for 49 years. One of his monikers was he was the congressman for all of Alaska. And as you know, we just have one. 2.5 times the size of Texas, 730,000 odd people, but we just have one. And so I think that's important for us to remember how many people we do represent when we're here, and look for those opportunities to work together in the common interest.
So on that vein, I want to sort of get into some looking ahead to the 119th Congress and the opportunities that are there, and sort of the different matters and issues we'll be working on. So Congressman Auchincloss, I'll come to you first. Something that's rather unique about the 119th is the majority is going to be as small as it can be. It's on track to be 217 to 215, meaning 0 vote margin. That being said, talk about the opportunities there for bipartisanship, just being the nature of the House breakdown, and also there being still the Senate filibuster. And then also talk about how Democrats are looking at this in terms of attendance really being the name of the game.
Certainly attendance is going to be critical. My next door neighbor in Massachusetts is Catherine Clark, the whip of the Democratic minority. So everybody pour one out for her tonight, because she's going to have a tough next term. We got to show up. Republicans have the trifecta, which means that they have the initiative, and it means they also have the responsibility. If they want to be bipartisan, then of course we're going to be there to be bipartisan with them. I can think of, right off the top of my head, at least 3 to 6 areas where we could do that. Fentanyl. 97% of fentanyl precursors are coming from the Chinese mainland. I'm the co-chair of the fentanyl working group, losing 100,000 Americans a year. That's not a partisan issue. We got to interdict those fentanyl supplies, money laundering, sanctions, joint task force, et cetera. The drug pricing middlemen, the pharmacy benefit managers, we got bipartisan momentum for that right now. If we don't get it done in the lame duck, we got to double down and get it done next Congress. Maximum pressure on Iran. Because of Israel's valiant fight in the Middle East, we got Iran on its back heels right now, with the collapse of the regime in Syria especially. When your enemy is on their back heels, you can push them. And President Trump's been clear he wants to exert maximum pressure. I think we should support him on that, too.
I agree.
Look at that. Bipartisanship right there, Kelly.
There's a lot of things that we're not going to agree on, but
I agree with that, though.
I was going to ask, I'm now just going off of the notes and just kind of curious what your thoughts are. If you could say in one word maybe what the biggest concern is, or the biggest threat to Congress going into next year, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
primaries. No, I'm serious. There's 435 members of Congress, and 400 of them are worried about their primaries, not about their general. You're not going to – all of the problems with Congress are not – most of them are not inside the chamber, actually. You could keep the same 435 members of Congress and have a much healthier dynamic if you made it so that most members didn't have to worry about their left or their right flank and could worry about the median voter in their district.
No, that's true. There are so many people. When you look at just pre-redistricting in 2020, there were probably 100 seats in play, and now there's probably 35 to 40. And when you can change a majority on 35 to 40 seats, spending billions of dollars, there were literally billions of dollars. And I'll give you just an example. In New York, the DCCC spent $280 million to take down 3 seats, and they won. And that's a game changer, if not for North Carolina and maybe 1 or 2 other states.
I was going to say North Carolina is the other example.
Yeah, well, but I mean, not for North Carolina. There would have been a whole different, there wouldn't have been a trifecta. So these seats are going to be so marginal as we go forward, and it doesn't fall on deaf ears. As the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who is a really good man, looks at this and wants there to be a better tone in Congress. And I think he's worked with Congressman Jeffries to make that happen, to try to work forward. And I think you're going to see more bipartisan stuff. There are going to be things we just don't simply agree on. That's okay, too. That's the difference in the parties. If we all listen, this country was founded on friction between two parties. It wasn't Democrat and Republican then. It was something else. But it took a little while to get to this, and everybody realized that a uniparty was not going to work. You had to have differing opinions to be heard and to be sharpened, and people could pick sides. And we're in an environment that we're encouraging, bipartisan approach because, as you mentioned, you cannot lose a single vote. That means you have to get, if you're a Republican, you have to agree on 100% of everything that's going on. I mean, I can tell you right now, there's nobody in this room who agrees 100% of the time with anything that goes on. You imagine the enormity of that when you have 217 CEOs of 810,000 people that all got elected. Nobody up here brought those people here. They all got elected and were put here. They have an opinion, and it matters. We got to figure out how to work through that.
Congresswoman-elect Simon, this was in Congressman Auchincloss, if you want to jump in with an answer here as well. As we talk about going forward, the future of the 119th Congress, one question that I've been hearing from a lot of lawmakers up on Capitol Hill is questioning who the next face of the Democratic Party will be. And there are a lot of names being floated around on the state level, on the federal level, in Congress, in different states. I'm curious to know what you guys think of who the next face of the Democratic Party will be as Democrats reel from the election losses of last month, but also look forward to 2026 and 2028.
You really want to get me fired. And I refuse to answer the question. You know what? I will push, and my retort will be this. The face of the Democratic Party, the face of the United States, the face of the Republican Party should be a little girl named Van that I met at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance when my husband was literally dying of leukemia. He was in a very difficult battle where he was getting a stem cell transplant, and it was a clinical trial. And every day post-transplant, we would go into clinic, and we met, I'll be quick, we met a family from West Virginia. The mom had never sat next to a black person. We found ourselves for 4 weeks in clinic every day post-transplant. The little girl had TPN. She had a tube through her nose. She had no hair. She was about 2 years old. She went through, if you know anyone who's gone through stem cell transplant, you know the fervor of that family. It bankrupted my family, and I buried my husband. Prior to him dying, before we left that campus, we were in clinic one day, and Lucy, the mom, said, Latifah, I'm so glad we saw you. We're leaving. And I was like, it's like prison when you're going through these horrible cancer treatments that are a gift, but it's very difficult. She said, we're leaving. And I said, oh, my God, you guys are in remission. And she said, no, she relapsed. And I will not name the healthcare company, but they said that she could not go through conditioning again and could not start over. The first place we went when Kevin was released from treatment, he died a year later, but before we actually went to our own home, we went to her funeral. That baby, someone made a decision about that child. She is the face of this country. For no act of their own, for folks who are seeking life, to live, to breathe, to have wonderful educations, to be able to play in parks. Folks, I could name 1,000 stories. We can politicize and be on cable on the weekends, but I know, and I live in the Bay Area, regardless who you point fingers to, I get calls every single day from young people saying, I just want a treatment bed. Those are the faces of this country. And we can point and we can do the whole, because I've done it most of my career, but when I sit with you, I do know that we could figure it out. I do feel that way. And if not, what is sketched on the base of the Statue of Liberty is a lie. It's a lie. So the faces of the people that we serve, those are the faces of our very fragile parties. And those are the faces that literally we work for, again, across our ideology and across our politic. That said, I do have favorite folks on both sides of the aisle, but I will yield to my colleagues.
Congressman Auchincloss, any idea who the next face of the Democratic Party will be?
No, and anybody who says differently is pitching something. We're 4 years out. Who would have called Barack Obama in 2004? You know, this is the first opportunity the party has had in 20 years. In 20 years, going into 2028, it's the first chance the party has had to truly, from first principles, have a primary where we're debating the things that we stand for. And I'm excited about that. And I think declaring right now who the right standard bearer is, we're just getting ahead of things.
I want to talk about the trend in the House Democratic Caucus, so sticking with Democrats on this one. In recent weeks, younger members challenging more veteran lawmakers for the top slots on committees. We saw that with Judiciary, Natural Resources. What do you make of this trend? Is this a good thing that we're seeing some new ideas and fresh faces jump into the mix in these top levels for both of you?
I think competition and choice is a good thing. I got a lot of respect for seniority and for the wisdom of our elders in the caucus, and I truly mean that. It's not a platitude. I really, it matters if you've been here for 10, 15 terms. I was just in a meeting today with Rick Larson, for example, the ranking member of TNI, and he was walking us through the plans for reauthorizing surface transportation. Like, it matters that he's done this 3-4 cycles already now on this reauthorization, and I respect that, but competition and choice is healthy for a party.
I agree. I agree. I think it's actually, it's the cornerstone of our democracy. But the culture of seniority, I think, in any institution should not only be respected, it's a deep value of knowledge, not only to find out where the bathrooms are, but to be very clear that we can't be an ahistorical people, that we need to know what's been tried and true. But in our party, I actually saw, again, as a new member, and my freshman colleagues saw that while somewhat contentious, because races are always contentious, there was so much respect in the room. And there's so much courage for a younger member to challenge their elder. But that is what we're here to do in some ways, to at least be able to rise to the occasion and say, I want to be a part of this line as well. I want to try to bring what I know from wherever I'm coming from to this conversation. Without it, to your point, who are we?
So I'd like to say something, and I'd like to give Minority Leader Jeffries a pat on the back for doing this, because this is the difference between the Republican, and we were just talking about this, difference between the Republicans and the rules and the Democrat rules. Republicans, you only get 6 years, and some of those years are your ranking member, and you have to ask for a specific waiver if you want to get another 2-year term. It's only been granted now twice in since I think like 40 years, 50 years. Virginia Fox last term or 2 terms ago, and now Sam Graves. But the reason this is important is seniority is important. We have a lot of long-serving members, much more on the Democrat side, because there is no term limit on chairmanships. We have a lot of bright people coming up, new ideas, innovative ideas that need to challenge some of our folks. On the House side, trust me, I sit on the steering committee where we put speaker or leaders on these committees. Once you're a committee chair, you'd love to stay there a long time. But that blocks people from wanting to be able to achieve, to rise up, to be the new TNI chair in the Democrat committee. And so I think it is important to have this new robustness and this new idea exchange and this new challenge to come forward. Also, I think it makes it less, I tell you, the negative side of it is, from my perspective, on the Republican side, it gives the Speaker of the House currently less leverage, because he doesn't have the leverage of keeping you, if you don't stay on there for a long time, you may not be the chair much longer. And so, whereas if you've been an ongoing chair for 10, 12, 15, 16 years, and a speaker comes up to you with the Democrat rules, you're going to do everything you can to whip the votes for the speaker if it were the Democrat. So I think there's just a difference in thinking, but I think if you're a new person coming up, you always want to be able to aspire to be the chairman of that committee if that's your passion. And if there are no term limits, you don't know ever when that's going to be.
Congressman-elect Begich, shifting gears a little bit, I was looking at your biography before today, and you are from quite the extensive Alaska political dynasty. Your grandfather, Nick Begich, held the seat that you hold right now in 1972. Your uncle was a senator here in D.C. Your other uncle was the minority leader of the Alaska Senate. When you were born, was it declared that you would be a member of Congress? Was this always in the books?
Let me just point out, all of the people you just mentioned, Democrats.
Right.
Right?
So how did that happen
Yes.
also? Please
Yeah,
enlighten.
so-
What does Thanksgiving look like?
When I was a kid, we called it the Great Debate because we have all sorts of perspectives at the table. And one of the great things about that, growing up in a political family, is you learn how to respectfully disagree. You can be strong, you've got your convictions, but you're also receptive and learning from others, right? So that was important. You know, it's interesting, like a lot of families around America, we've got Democrats, we've got Republicans, we have a libertarian in our family, we've got independents. I was raised on my mom's side of the family, so if anyone's wondering how in the world does a Begich from Alaska become a Republican, I was raised that way. I happen to believe in those
Placing
ideals.
blame right now.
Yeah, that's right. Credit. Yeah.
Or credit.
Yeah. So, but no, you know, I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. And we have different ways of getting to that end state objective. But, you know, that's what it's all about. It's about having that great debate. And whether it's at your kitchen table over Thanksgiving or whether it's here in the halls of Congress, it's about having that great debate, respecting one another at the end of the day, moving the ball forward for the people who sent you here, because we are here to serve. And just one quick comment. I'm so encouraged to hear everyone up here on this panel focus on merit as the driving force for who should be in leadership and setting the table for the marketplace of ideas. We know that that's so important for our democratic republic to ensure that the best ideas surface, that they move into legislative code and are signed into law. So that's the objective. I'm looking forward to being a part of that process.
I know I keep coming back to bipartisanship and working across the aisle, but in that same vein, I wanted to see if you could share something kind or that you like about either the other member of the party or something that you could say about the opposite party of your own that you appreciate.
So I decided to do something very scary coming in and write a letter to our speaker. And there were folks on my team who were like, that's crazy. That's not a good idea. But during speaker orientation, did you notice that I didn't draw from the box? No, because you were so happy with yours. I remember. you got
There's
a good
a story
number.
there. I did not draw from the box because our race wasn't called until after
I
the
didn't
lottery.
draw from the box either.
There you
Okay,
go.
so
Okay.
I will tell you why I didn't. I wrote Speaker Johnson, and I said, you know, I'm from California. I know you might have some issue with California. But I'm also a legally blind woman, and I've been relying on public transportation my whole life. And as a visually impaired person, I'm a disability advocate, and I'm hoping your constituents, as well as the constituents in Middle America and the South and the North, will come to my office to see one of their own. That it's possible to scream on the mountaintops for the rights of folks, to expand the rights of folks who are just trying to get through. There are wheelchairs, there are blind folks with dogs. I don't even love dogs, sorry to the dog lovers. But folks need to be able to be in a place where if the lights go off, they're not stuck in the elevators trying to come visit me. I mean, I wrote this all in a letter. I was expecting to get a really either shrill phone call back, but not ever from the speaker. Maybe a letter from an intern. Within a day, I got a response. And the speaker said, Longworth, 1023, take it or leave it, you got 2 hours. And I ran to Longworth. They are mice, so, you know, there's that. But it's right next to an entrance. And I had tears in my eyes, and I know it's going to be difficult. I worked with and for people who folks didn't even conceive to be human. I know that our bipartisanship is not the healthiest. The culture needs work. But I thought, well, damn. We care about our families. We care how people get to and fro. Now, clearly there are other issues that we're going to go head to head with. But it softened my heart. And, you know, the Latin saying, I'm not going to try it right now. You know, when the guys were entering the Colosseum and they would say either something like, we're going to die tonight or whatever. I was very clear in that moment. It's a very, very challenging time for the tens of millions of people just in my region alone, on my side of the country, and they all need us all. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. The first thing that I did was I called Disability Action, and I said, guess what, guys? Guess what? We got a small win. And I got to believe who we are, we will collectively have many more wins together. It was a beautiful, beautiful surprise.
Congressman-elect Begich.
So, something nice about a party member on the other side of the aisle or the party itself?
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. Well, I think we've heard already so many things that would fit those qualifications. I think at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we all want the same thing. We want a prosperous America. We want strong families. We want to make sure that people have opportunities, that their hard work, determination, right living, good decision making is going to be rewarded. We want the same thing. And I think that when we focus on that as the end state objective, it makes the conversations that get us there a lot easier.
Congressman Auchincloss.
I don't know Speaker Johnson, never met with him or talked with him, but I was watching him and with him the day earlier this year that we voted on the Ukraine aid. And it was Ukraine-Israel aid together. And I was very frustrated with him that it had taken that long. But I recognized that that was a politically hard thing for him to put on the floor. And he knew that he was going to face a eruption on his right flank for it. And the Speaker Emerita came over to him and they exchanged a couple of words. And, you know, I'm not going to relay them here, but it was basically sort of
we won't tell anybody if you tell us.
It was one leader to another saying, sometimes you got to do the thing that's right, you know, and not the thing that is just good for your own political shape in the next few days. And I could see on his face that, you know, he was having some political indigestion, but also that he was doing the right thing and the brave thing. And I admired that because it is hard to buck your own party. It's hard. And he did it. And it was the right thing to do for democracy.
Congressman Hern, we'll give you the last word.
Yeah, so many of you watched the 15 rounds of electing Speaker McCarthy last January. There's always the stories that you guys, some people report about these stories, but my story is on that Sunday, my mother had been sick for a number of years, and on that Sunday I saw her for the last time before I flew to Washington, D.C. to vote on a Speaker of the House to do my constitutional duty. She passed away at 2:30 in the morning on that Monday, January 2nd, and a day later, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want there to be any pity for Kevin Hern or any of that, so I didn't tell anybody. And word got out, and my wife sent me a text of a vase of flowers that were sent to me. And I said, that was very nice. And she said, look at the card, and she zoomed in on the card, and it was from a person in the Democrat Party that I'd never met. It was from Hakeem Jeffries. And, you know, in the midst of all this chaos that went on, I went up to him because I never received anything from the Republican leadership. It was from the Democrat leadership. And so I got to know, you know, there is compassion in this business. You know, you can be at all out warfare, another side wishing for demise and kind of enjoying a little bit of chaos. But there are moments like this every single day. We do have fun, in spite of what everybody may report. There are very fun moments. I was going to say earlier, I think this is important to take the job serious, but not yourself so serious, because America will go on, and guess what? When you're gone from here for a couple of years, nobody will ever remember who you were, and you might as well accept that. I mean, just as an example, the other day I had my wife and her friend here. Sunday night I was by myself. We were the only two non-police officers in the entire U.S. Capitol, and I was making this statement to him because everybody says, well, "We want you to run for Speaker of the House." And I said, "Let me just show you something. Who's that guy right there, that bus?" And they said, "I don't know. Here's his name." And I covered up something. This guy was Speaker of the House for 8 years in 1940. I've never heard of this guy's name in my life. So don't take yourself so serious. This place will go on as it has for 250 years. Thank you so much.
On that note, thank you to Congressman Hern, Congressman Auchincloss, Congressman-elect Nick Begich, and Congressman-elect Simon. And I'll pass it over to Bill Salmon.
Thank you so much for that wonderful discussion. And I have to say that even as a jaded Washington insider, I found that honestly very, very inspiring. So thank you for a great conversation. And thank you in particular to Michael Schnell of The Hill, Kelly Meyer of News Nation for leading the conversation. One last thanks to our sponsors. And the last thing I'll say is I would like to make a toast. So grab a glass if you've got one nearby, whatever's within reach. Grab somebody else's glass if you have to. And let's raise those glasses because on behalf of The Hill and on News Nation, I would like to propose a toast to all of the attendees tonight for braving this weather and coming out here to this wonderful event, but in particular to the members of the 119th Congress, both new and not so new. We thank you for your service. We salute you for working through these tough issues on behalf of all Americans. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and cheers. Thank you all. Appreciate you coming. Enjoy the evening.